You ready?
Born ready, dude.
Hi, my name is Johnny Ray, and this is a show from addicts for addicts. During this time of this pandemic, it's going to be very difficult for people to find recovery in other fields. So, what I'd like to do is I'd like to bring testimonies from people who have to do with experience in addiction, people who know addiction from all scales and all walks of life. And I'd like to make these testimonies for people who need them as an outsource for people to go somewhere else to be able to find recovery where it's needed. As I said, this is a show for addicts from addicts. I was an addict for 20 years, and I'd like to introduce my father next to me who has dealt with it from a different perspective. I figured his view on addiction will help a lot of people. So, Dad, I'd just like to ask you one question, and the question is how is it being the father of an addict in the beginning, during, and now after since I've been clean?
Wow. So, being a father of an addict and having absolutely no idea what being an addict is, other than the fact of I believe everyone has some sort of an addiction. Um, Mine is biting my fingernails. Believe me, it has absolutely nothing
Nice.
to do with that kind of an addict that my son has been for, like you said, the last 20 years. As far as being the father of a drug addict, I was just very confused in the beginning. I had no idea what I was dealing with. Um, I have never smoked marijuana. I have never done any kind of a drug at all. And I had no idea what he was going through. He was 15 years old, and I thought that everything was normal. He was just a really happy kid. And I came to realize that he really um, wasn't happy all the time. He was high. And that is a word that I came to know very early on in his addiction. Um, for the most part, in the beginning, I just shied away from it. I just thought, like I'd always read, that, oh, it's no big deal. He's just smoking marijuana. And at that time, of course, it was still illegal. But it was more than that. Um, in the beginning, I basically let my wife at the time handle everything. She seemed to know more about what he was going through on a daily basis. And so I just did what dads do. I worked. I went to work every day. I worked as much as I can. I had two kids and a wife to support, and that was my focus. And I did not spend the time that I should have spent um, getting to know him as a young adult, getting to know him and what he was going through, and trying to understand that, and maybe trying to not let him do it. Because I believe by me not getting involved, it just turned out to be a gateway for him, a gateway to drugs that were more powerful, drugs that were more controlling. And that's the part that really bothers me, is that I had no idea. I just thought, hey, he'll smoke marijuana for a while and that'll be it. He'll go back to just being Johnny and he'll be happy without it. Or maybe he just does smoke marijuana forever. Because from what I understand, there's a lot of people that never move on from marijuana. They just smoke marijuana and it makes them cope, makes them feel better about themselves and other people. And that, in our case, did not turn out to be the truth. And so I'm going to tell you a little story. And this is basically where we kind of separated um, as a family. He was 15, and I had always taught my children honesty was the most important thing. Always be honest. You be honest with me, I'll be honest with you. And so we were sitting at the kitchen table. We were getting ready. It was the day before, or a couple days before. We were getting ready to leave. We were going to go to the ocean and celebrate our anniversary, his mother and I. And I had let the kids know that we would be gone for the weekend and that I expected them just to follow rules and, keep the house nice. You can have a couple friends over or whatever. But yeah. And as it turns out, Johnny let me know, sitting across the table, not very far away from each other, just like we are now, is that he was going to throw a party. And in his words, it was going to be a rager. And I was like, "You're kidding, right?" And he just looked at me and said, "No, you always said, be honest, tell us the truth. So I am going to throw a massive party here." And I said, "No, no, you're not. Absolutely, you're not going to do that." And he again reiterated, "Yes, I'm going to." His sister, of course, was kind of quiet. And I knew that meant she was in on it. She was going to be part of this party. She was older. But his mother, she kept reassuring me, "Nope, they're not. He's just teasing you. He's just having fun with you." And I was pissed because now my time at the ocean enjoying my wife and what we were celebrating was not going to happen. I would be worried about this event the whole weekend. And I was. And of course, when we got home, I'll never forget, I was driving down the street, coming close to our house, and I could see about 100 feet away, 200 feet away, that my screen door was busted. And I knew it was not like that when I left. And as I got closer, I noticed the garage door was open. There were garbage cans filled with beer. And I was like, excuse my words, holy shit. He did exactly what he said he was going to do.
Excuse his word.
Exactly.
Right.
And then as I got
It's an art show.
into the house, right, it was a disaster. Even though they tried to clean it up,
We tried to clean it up.
it was a disaster.
We didn't do very
They
well.
destroyed our stereo system. There was beer all inside the stereo. There were puddles of crap everywhere. The carpet, I mean, it was destroyed. And I didn't know it at the time, but come to find out years later, many years, as in the last 2 years since he's been here with us, that they were selling drugs out of every room in our house. That really bothered me. Even though I found out many, many years later, I felt betrayed. I felt like that I wasn't respected, that it was just pretty much, this is what we decided to do, and that's what we were going to do. At the time, of course, I didn't know they were selling drugs out of every room, but I knew that what they had chosen to do was wrong, and I was just extremely angry, and I just looked at him and I said, "Get out. Get out of my house. You're not welcome here. You have completely ruined my trust. And if I can't trust you in my house, then you can't be here." And so that led to us being pretty much estranged from each other, off and on. We had a family business and he worked in the family business. And so I'd see him every once in a while at the family business and he'd work his shift and he'd bitch and he'd complain and he would just be, excuse me again, he'd be a total asshole. And he thought there was nothing wrong with it. But I knew at the time, at that point now, that it was the drugs talking. And he didn't want to be there. All the money that he made, he just went out and probably bought drugs with it. And so it took us to a place where I didn't look at him as my son anymore. I just looked at him as he was just an employee. And to be honest, just not a very good one. But because I knew that if I didn't at least allow him to be part of it, his mother would be absolutely enraged all the time and totally upset with me for not you know, just being around him, which I just, to be honest, despised. Didn't like him. Didn't even like him as a person because he had his own agenda, and his agenda was drugs and partying and having a good time, and mine was trying to build a business for them. Basically, at some point, that's what you want to do as a parent, is you want to be able to give your children something better and leave them something better than that which you had for yourself. And that was always my goal. And I quickly learned that that was not ever going to happen. And so this went on, and eventually he just disappeared. He moved to Everett with his sister, and they had an apartment. I didn't go visit. Like I said, he wasn't really much to me. He was, at that point, a drug addict. And I had no idea what a drug addict was or how to deal with it. So I just let him live his life. And I would hear from him every once in a while. Mostly I would hear from other people who still hung out with him that he was okay. And that was my main concern, really. I was just hoping he was still alive and that he was, I guess, okay. And a few years went by, and I remember another point where I went to visit him for the first time. And I had heard that they'd pretty much got rid of everything. They'd sold it all for drugs. And when I went into his apartment, the door was open. And I'll never forget, he was sitting Indian style with his legs crossed. And he was staring into a full-length mirror. And I couldn't understand what he was doing. And as I got closer, I realized that he had a pair of tweezers in his hand. And I came to know this word. It was called tweaking. And my son was sitting there pulling out not his eyebrows, which people do, women do all the time. They pluck their eyebrows. He was plucking his eyelashes. And he proceeded to pull every eyelash, except for a few that he had left when I had got there. And I realized at that point that this was far, far worse than anything I'd ever imagined, could have imagined. And at that point, I was just trying to look at somewhere to find help. Who can I go to as a parent? And I know, and this goes out to all you parents out there that are dealing with it or have dealt with it. It is the most helpless feeling you can have, because these are your children. These are the only things, when it all comes down to the end, that you want. You want the best for your kids. And at that point, I knew that I could do nothing as a parent. I couldn't understand what he was doing. I didn't understand what he was doing, the drugs that he was using. I had no idea. So I just sat back and let other people who knew more and could understand what he was going through, had been there maybe themselves, and let them hopefully help him. And so a lot of this I just recall because I separated myself almost completely from his situation. I just went into work mode. A lot of us do that, right? You do what you know. And what I knew was work. I knew how to work from a very young age. So I just let other people help him. And from what I understand, he had moments of clarity where he was able to kick the drugs for a while. And then there were times where he just fell right back into it and had a lot of trials and tribulations in his life. And so I just continued to live my life, he would call every once in a while, and he would always start off the same way. It would always be, "Hey, Dad, how you doing? Is everything good? Because everything's great with me. It's fantastic. I'm enjoying my life. I hope you're enjoying your life." And he would be very energetic and very happy. And then the question would come, the same question every time was, "So, can you give me some money?"
Right.
And I would be like, "No, Johnny, no, I can't give you any money." And to be honest, maybe the first couple times, maybe I did say yes. Maybe I did send him something. To be honest, I don't recall. This was a 20-year ordeal. But I realized very quickly that giving him money was not the right thing to do. And I understand there's parents out there, right? And I hope the one word that you get out of this whole thing from me as a parent is enabling. You cannot be an enabler to your children. Otherwise, it's never going to work. You have to literally cut them off. You have to discharge yourself from their life and basically give up. I guess maybe giving up isn't really the word I should use. I don't want to say I ever gave up, but I checked out myself. And it just made it easier to say, you need to figure this out on your own. I will always be your dad. I'll always, be your father. But I am not going to be your friend. I am not going to be your enabler. You need to go out, figure it all out, and hopefully praying to God like I did that he would come back and be a good, honest, kind, loving person. And I really hope that deep down inside he would always carry those traits with him, that the drugs would not take that away. And so we did that for many years. My wife and I got a divorce. I ended up selling our family business. We lost everything. I lost my house, everything I had. But knowing my faith in God, it made it that I could understand that there was going to be better things. Things were going to get better. And that was 2003. And then I sold the business, I guess, completely in like 2005, I believe. And I really shouldn't say sold because that's not really true. I really lost it. I lost it all. I had nothing to sell. So I got, just went into my own world, found other jobs and worked, still trying to keep in touch with him as little as I could. See, and that's what I say. I say as little as I could. And that's really true. I really didn't want anything to do with him. As long as he was still calling me on the phone and asking me that one question that it would always be, that I just hated. I learned to hate that because I knew it was coming. No matter how happy he was, the question was always going to come. And then as time rolled on, he became very angry when he didn't like the answer, which was always the same. He wouldn't just hang up. He would start swearing and cussing and wished I was dead and wished that he'd never been born, that I wasn't his father. I knew that was the drugs talking, but it still didn't make it any easier. And then I got very, very blessed. And I met my wife now in 2008. And at that time, Johnny and I didn't really have still much to do with each other. But in the beginning with my wife, one of the first things we did is he called one day and said, "I'm stuck. I've got people with me. We went to a concert at the Gorge and my car's broke down. I've got nobody to help me. Will you come help me?"
Tom Petty.
Yeah. And so My wife and I at the time, in fact, I don't even think we were married yet. I think we were just dating. And I said, I can't do this. I'm not going to bring you into this mess. She had no idea anything about him, what he'd gone through. And in my mind, I believed everything that I was doing was was above what she had ever been through. Didn't know really much about drugs and what it could do to people. But she said, no, we have to go. We have to help them. They're stuck. They have nobody. And to be honest with you, I didn't care about that. I didn't. It was like I knew exactly what I was dealing with at that time. And to me, it was giving in. It was like, I don't want to do that. But she talked me into it. And so we drove for I don't know how many hours, met him on the side of the road. It was extremely hot, I remember. And they were all high, I think. And I'm not going to go into details about who was with them because I don't think that's really relevant. I think that the biggest thing that I learned still was that he was still a mess. But I gave him a ride and I helped them as much as they can and that they needed and took them wherever they needed. I don't remember. Most of these things I block out of my mind. They're just things I don't want to deal with. I don't want to have to deal with. So we helped them, got them on their way. We went back to our world. He went back to his world. And we stayed a little more in touch. My wife and I now we did get married, and we invited Johnny to come up to see us a few times, and then we'd go down there. But the one thing that never changed was the fact that I knew he was always high, and I knew that things had gotten worse because when I would see him, he was, I guess manic. He would have these highs and lows that were just extremely happy, and then he would turn to just unbelievably crying, and he just would not stop bawling and tell me how sorry he was and how much he just screwed everything up and screwed up our relationship. And I didn't want to deal with that. I really didn't. I understood what he was saying, but I didn't want to deal with it. I wanted him to come back to being my son, the person that I loved. And I knew that wasn't him. I knew maybe down deep inside he was still there, but that wasn't him at the time. So I basically would wash my hands of it. And I would see him for a little while, even sometimes just for a few minutes when we'd maybe plan to be there and see him for a couple of days. I couldn't do it. I couldn't be around it. And there was, my daughter who was there with them, and that bothered me because they're the only two children I had, and I knew they were both struggling with things. But I wasn't capable of handling them. I wasn't capable of saying the right things to them. I'd try to say, stay working, stay positive, take care of yourself. But that's not what they wanted to hear. They really didn't. All they really wanted was, can you give me some money? And I knew what that meant. That really meant, can you help me continue to get high and stay this life? And I was like, that's not it. So I'm not going to deal with this. I'm just going to leave, and you continue to do whatever it is that you think you need to do in your life. And I will pray and hope that you get better. And someday you will get better. And this went on till 2000, and I want to say 18. And in August of 2018, I remember I was sitting in my recliner chair, and my wife got a text message from my son. And he said, "Dad, I have been a compulsive liar for 20 years. I would like to change my life. Will you give me another chance? And for a little bit, that became something that I had to really, really think about and pray about, because I realized at the time it just wasn't about me anymore. If I was going to give him another chance, I figured what that meant was I was going to need to bring him back here. And it meant that there was going to be rules that he was going to have to follow. And I was going to have to get the approval of my wife, because she didn't deserve anything. She did not deserve what might happen. If there was going to be problems, and I knew there could be, she didn't deserve that. So I had to get her approval and her permission to bring him back to live with us. And we thought about it and prayed about it for about, I would say, a couple of weeks went by. And she finally, after serious anxiety that she struggled with for days, and I mean, she cried literally all day long. It upset her so bad because she did not know the decision to make. And I just left it up to her. And finally, after about 3 days, she said, I don't think I could live with myself, and I don't think you could live with yourself either if we did not take a chance on him. Give him another chance. And so we made the decision to give him an opportunity to come back and live with us. Now, I want to let all you parents out there know that are struggling with this and are going through it and even thinking about this, is that you have to set boundaries. You have to set rules. So
and enforce them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we made a contract and went over all the rules that he needed to abide by on a daily basis. You know, there were such things as you have to find a job, you have to stay employed, right? Even just little things like you have to clean your room. It might seem really petty, but that's where everything has to start. It has to start first thing when they wake up in the morning. Make their bed. It seems petty, doesn't it? But it's not. It sets the tone for his entire day, every day. It might be the only thing that they do all day. But that's what you have to start with. And then they have to go out, work all day, and all I could do was hope that that's what he did. I couldn't enforce it. I couldn't make him go look for a job, but he did. He went out, he found a job, and it wasn't a great job. At the beginning, it was just he worked for the temporary agency, but it was a start. I knew then that at least he was going to make an effort to try and follow the rules. And of course, no drugs and all of those things. And I could tell, now remember, I could not tell if he was on drugs, but there were certain things that he would do, like he would sweat profusely, right? He would talk really, really fast and when he was high. And he would go high and low and he would cry. And he stopped doing all those things. And so I knew at that point in my mind that I had to tell myself for sure that he wasn't on drugs. And then the biggest thing that I had to do is I had to trust him, which was so hard to do. It took so long for me to be like, I trust you. Hard thing to say. But he got the job at the temp agency, then he left that, and then he got a seasonal job working for UPS, which I think was very good for him because it gave them a chance to know him, but also they gave him an opportunity to, if he did well, to maybe work full time for UPS. Now, I'd known from my background that more than likely that wasn't going to happen. But he didn't know that.
It was good exercise.
Yeah, and he worked very, very hard at what he did. And he did that for a few months, and then after the holidays were over, he was going to get laid off. That was going to happen, and we knew it. But he didn't waste any time. He got out there, and then he found another job. And so that's basically where it's taken us to, is the point that our trust level has gotten so high. And I have to say, and I know a lot of people out there don't want to necessarily bring religion into this. And I understand that. And I'm not going to sit here and preach to you and tell you how important it is. I know it's important in my life and it's important in my wife's life. And the biggest thing I know is it became important in his life. And he started to go to church with us, and he became a very well-liked person at church. He makes friends easily. He's got an amazing testimonial. He can tell you from experience, when he speaks, people know it's from the heart. And that's all that speaking to people is speaking to them from the heart. And he made a lot of friends, and he's brought in his NA into church, and he has helped, it's probably thousands of people that he's helped. And I'm just going to give you one blip that stuck with me on that. And that was, we went to his 1 year anniversary where he was clean for a year. And I understand that is a very, very big event. And absolutely, we were so proud of him. My wife and I went, my ex-wife and her husband and her grandparents and my wife's grandparents, and the kids all went, his brothers and sister were there. And it was a beautiful thing. And I remember one person who spoke there, and he said that if it wasn't for Johnny, he would probably be dead. Think about that for a minute. And I think if every one of us goes to our grave and there is nothing else that we can take with us, but someone says that about us, that we saved a life, it's enough. And so I knew at that moment we had made a change, and that our world was going to get a lot better. And he was going to continue to help people, and I was going to do everything that I could do to help him help people. Because I know at that moment, we were all going to be stronger. We were going to be better human beings. And that is what this world is all about. With everything that is going on, that we're dealing with, that we have been dealing with, that all we have is each other. This is all we have in this world. So choose to be kind, choose to be good, choose to see the best in everyone. We all have that opportunity, no matter who that person is. And so at this moment, I'm learning so much about Johnny and what he has come to do. And I'm honored that he's given me this opportunity to sit here and be a part of this. And I hope it helps millions of people. And they all learn from this. Whether you're on drugs, whether you're off drugs, whether you're a parent of drug users, we can all help each other. And that is my wish to everyone out there, that this finds you and in some way touches you.
I feel like we should hug.
Oh, I love you, son.
Wow. So normally I would start making comments and stuff in between, but because that testimony was so good, I was just like dead silent and zoned in because that's the first time I've heard it. You know, we're sitting next to each other, and every single day, you know, my father and I get into this routine of trying to help people, and we're trying to figure out different ways to help people. And because of this pandemic and everything that's going on, this seems to be the outlet for everybody. It's technology, it's computers, it's phones. You know, my father and I, we're an eye to eye kind of a person. We like to go places that and look people in the face, and we like to help people and you know, judge them based on their emotions and how they're handling things. And you can't do that right now. So this is just a different outlet. This is just a way. You know, someday I'll share my testimony on here, but this is just for a perspective of a father who has gone through addiction with his child. There are people that reach out constantly and are looking for outs and ways to fix. And everything my father said was dead on. You know, when we talk about what enabling equals encouraging, encouraging equals hurting. You're hurting them. If you enable a child or your kid or another, you know, relative, whether it be a cousin or you know, whatever it is, if you enable them, what you're doing is you're hurting them. Sometimes the most difficult thing you have to do is to cut loose. I don't judge my father for cutting me loose because he did exactly what was necessary. So that's what made me reach where I'm at today. It did last a long time. I have a lot of crazy stories and a lot of things that happened to me that I can share at a different time. But right now, what I'd like to do is I just like to say, you know, there is a way out. There's always a way out. Recovery is around every corner. Sometimes the tough decisions are the right decisions. And you know, I'm so thankful for where I'm at today. I'm thankful for the relationship I have with my father. We're getting to do so many different things that we've never done in the last 20 years of my addiction. And him and I are servicing the world together. And that's what's important. So if you got anything from this video, I hope that's awesome. And, you know, look forward to, I'm going to probably post a couple more. I'm going to have a couple more interviews with a couple other people that are in my recovery field and people that I think can really reach out and help those who suffer. So I want to say thank you to my father.
Awesome.
And yeah, I hope you heard something that you enjoyed. Thanks.